Side radar and sonar sensors. First of all, these sensors provide monitoring of blind spot areas around the vehicle. The radar sensors are located in the rear corners of the vehicle and detect objects at farther distances. The sonar sensors are distributed evenly behind the rear bumper and detect objects at closer distances. Sonar sensors may also be located at the front of the vehicle for park assist. Radar sensors support things such as BSW, BSI, RCTA, and BCI. And then lastly, the sonar sensors support the BCI and park assist. You know, Jake, one of the things that I think shops don't take into consideration is that when a quarter panel is damaged, where that blind spot or BSW sensor or mounting bracket is at. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's critical because when you buy the part, you actually don't get the bracket with the part, and yet you're responsible for welding it in the right place. So I think we've got some exercises to show you exactly how to do that.
Great. So let's talk about the blind spot warning or BSW. The BSW uses the side radar sensors to detect vehicles in the blind spot while driving. If a vehicle is detected in the blind spot, an indicator near the side mirror illuminates to alert the driver. If the turn signal is activated with a vehicle in the blind spot zone, then an audible alert and a warning light are provided. Indicators on both sides will illuminate when you cycle the key. So Jake, we see that we're talking about when the turn signal's on, we're going to have an audible alert and a warning light. Are these warning lights in the mirror, or are they on the dash, or where are they at?
So they're typically located in that little plastic triangle above the trim panel, but on certain vehicles like my Titan, they're actually found in the mirror glass. So they can be in both places. You know, and when a shop is running through their QC or quality control checks, this is a really good one for you to check along with your bulbs and lamps and such. So you want to get in the vehicle, cycle the key, make sure both indicators illuminate, and then they go off. If they don't do that, you've got a potential fault or an issue.
So it's really important in some of the upcoming exercises that you understand this principle. We're now going to share some real-world examples with you and a kind of a case study that Jake has experienced on a 2017 Nissan Maxima in regards to the BSM. Jake, tell us about this, what you learned.
Well, some of the things that we can encounter is that the connector has not been fully inserted into the module. And so when you insert that connector, you should actually hear it click, right? And if you don't see that, then you know you didn't get it all the way in. Another thing that you see with Nissan and Infiniti vehicles is that the ground location on the connector determines what side the radar is actually on. So if you imagine that in a collision event where a vehicle struck that radar, struck the bracket, and destroyed the connector, and you either repin the connector yourself or you hired an outside party to come in and do it, you want to make sure you pay attention to the alignment of the wires going into that connector because the ground is critical on Nissan vehicles.
So it's really important that we just listen to what Jake just said. What Jake showed me recently on a Nissan Altima 2020 was that on the left-hand blind spot monitor on the left quarter panel versus the right side, the wire colors were different. So a lot of the technicians that you like to save those wiring harnesses for what if, just in case I need it, guess what? They're not interchangeable. And that's a really important thing for you to know should you have to order that wiring harness for any reason or perform a repair. Now, in regards to these blind spot monitors, it's also very important that you understand that they have very specific torque specifications. So in each of your toolboxes, you will find a torque wrench, and we want to make sure that you're torquing things to the proper specifications. You will see here in this picture that it's giving us some torque specifications. Jake, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're always going to see a little wrench and bolt icon followed by the torque spec in Newton meters. So in this case, 5.5 Newton meters is what the specification is for Nissan.
Now we're going to talk a little bit more about that 2017 Nissan Maxima BSM or blind spot monitor. Here you can see the electronic parts catalog referred to as EPC. And you will note that the new quarter panel on this specific vehicle is not serviced with the new BSW bracket. And there are two different brackets based on the production date of the vehicle. So it's important when we order parts that we're verifying all parts orders by the VIN number, as well as the production date. Jake, any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't want to find when you're trying to push a vehicle to paint and you realize that the radar bracket is not on the quarter panel and it's not something you want to tackle when you're trying to put the vehicle back together. You also will find that there's a very specific location to weld the bracket to the quarter panel prior to paint, and that info can be found in Tech Info.
And again, the measurements or the location of this bracket, it has to be very precise. So Jake, should a shop repair or replace a quarter panel, would you recommend that they do some type of calibration or check the values with a console before the vehicle is painted?
Well, fortunately, there's no calibration required on the blind spot monitoring system for Nissan Infiniti vehicles, at least on the models we're covering. But there is a configuration that we want to check to make sure that the module is registering when we do the health check. We see both left and right, and also checking in the ADAS control module that it is configured to that vehicle.
So again, to emphasize, before you refinish the vehicle after a quarter panel has been repaired or replaced or this bracket has been addressed, it's important that we check the configuration and value of the blind spot monitor.
Right.
So as we just shared with you in the previous slide, the blind spot monitor, where it mounts at, is a very precise location. It's very precise. So Jake, can you tell us a little bit about what technicians need to think about, or estimators, blueprinters, repair planners, when they're replacing a quarter panel or the blind spot monitor bracket?
Yeah, well, this one can be kind of tough to find, right? So, if you look in service data specifications, you'll see that the radar bracket has a very specific measurement that you want to measure from the lowest mounting tab all the way to one of the reference bolt holes that holds on the retainer. So you want to make that measurement and then actually weld the bracket in the right place.
Great. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you feel the labor time is not sufficient, you can always submit an inquiry to the degweb.org website. Let's talk a little bit about the blind spot warning operating conditions. Jake, can you tell us a little bit about what it makes or what it takes for this to work?
Well, remember, some customers may want to turn this feature off. So in the gauge cluster or in the navigation system, you could see the button turned on or off. And when you're testing it, you want to make sure it's turned on. The blind spot system operates approximately above 20 miles per hour with the vehicle in drive. Rear cross traffic alert, however, works in reverse below 5 miles an hour.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, you will see, look at the photo on this, where the blind spot detection zone is. That's why it's important to review the Nissan or Infiniti position statements as well as tech info about any repair precautions in regards to the damage to a rear bumper cover. Let's talk a little bit about the blind spot intervention, referred to as BSI. The BSI system uses the lane camera to detect lane markers while the side radar sensors detect the presence of vehicles in the detection zone of the adjacent lane or blind spot. The lane camera determines if the driver is moving towards the occupied lane, meaning if they're starting to drift. Now the BSI, or blind spot intervention, can intervene by applying braking to the wheels opposite the occupied lane to help move the vehicle away from the object. Or vehicles with DAS, D-A-S-T, will use the steering correction to move the vehicle away from the occupied lane. Keep in mind that the BSI only operates at speeds above approximately 20 miles per hour. Jake, any other considerations in regards to the blind spot intervention?
Well, I think the key point there is that the trim level decides whether the vehicle intervenes by applying brakes or if it has direct adaptive steering, applying steering input. So depending on what you're working on, a high-end Infiniti or a high-end Nissan could determine how the system actually works. So when you're trying to troubleshoot this, are you going to start with the braking system on this vehicle, depending on how it's trimmed, or are you going to go to direct adaptive steering?
Which again, I'm hoping by now you're starting to understand the importance of why we need to use an OEM factory console scan tool, or the Aztec, which is using the console on the other end. Because again, only the factory scan tool has access to the build data to understand which vehicles have which features. Again, I hope you're catching on by now. Rear Cross Traffic Alert, referred to as RCTA. I'm hoping you're catching on to all these acronyms. The RCTA, or Rear Cross Traffic Alert, is designed to help detect vehicles crossing in the path behind the vehicle while backing out of parking spaces, garages, or driveways.
So Mike, rear cross traffic alert is something every Nissan and Infiniti vehicle owner will use because they all go to a grocery store. They all deal with tight, alleys and exits going down a lane and potentially not seeing a vehicle that's coming down that lane, right? So the way this system works is it uses the rear radars under 5 miles an hour in reverse to detect a vehicle coming from the opposite direction and warn and alert the driver, and in some cases engage the brakes.
So RCTA, or Rear Cross Traffic Alert Operation, let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, it's turned on when the blind spot is turned on in the driver's assistance settings. Now, the RCTA only operates at speeds below approximately 5 miles an hour when the vehicle's in reverse. And the radar sensors can detect the approaching vehicle from up to 66 feet away, which is 20 meters for those of you that may be from north of the border. Now, if the side radar sensors detect a vehicle crossing the rear path, the RCTA sounds a single beep and the blind spot indicator on the side of the approaching vehicle blinks. Now, keep in mind that the RCTA, or Rear Cross Traffic Alert, is designed to detect crossing vehicles traveling less than 20 miles per hour. So, Jake, obviously, this has to only work when it's in reverse, right?
Right.
So how does the car know when we're in reverse?
Well, the bulk of the Nissan Infiniti lineup actually determines reverse by the transmission gear selector. So it's in reverse, it's in drive.
So there's a sensor.
Yes, so it detects, hey, I'm in drive or I'm in reverse, right? The Nissan Titan is a little bit different. It actually detects reverse by the rear turn signal relay. So that's found in the dash. So what you're looking at here is the EWD, the electronic wiring diagram. So when you look at the wiring diagram, we can see that the M73 right here is a relay that is responsible for sending the reverse circuit to the tail lamp of the Titan.
So again, as a technician or an estimator, blueprint or repair planner, never know which term to use these days, at the end of the day, you may need to access this information in the EWD, which Jake again stands for
Electronic wiring diagram,
which is found in Tech Info. Backup collision intervention, referred to as BCI. The BCI system uses side radar sensors to detect objects behind and to the side of the vehicle, while using rear sonar sensors to detect objects directly behind the vehicle. The BCI can warn the driver if objects are detected in the rear path, and they can then intervene using the automatic brake application and the mechanical pushback on the accelerator pedal. Jake, any thoughts on this feature?
Well, I think the important part to remember is that the blind spot radar is working when the vehicle is far away. And as it gets closer, the rear sonar sensors take over. So it's an example of where two systems, two sensors are working together to make an intelligent decision.
Let's discuss a little bit further or take a deeper dive into the BCI operation. The BCI automatically turns on every single time the vehicle is started. Now, the BCI can be temporarily turned off using the BCI switch, and it will be shown as off in the meter display. If you're not sure where the BCI switch is located at, again, refer to the owner's manual. To turn the BCI system off permanently, it must be turned off in the driver's assistance settings. When turned on, the BCI operates at speeds below 5 miles per hour when shifted into reverse. And the two side radar sensors can detect objects from farther distances. Lastly, the rear sonar sensors can detect objects behind the vehicle from closer distances. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how the BCI operates when we're actually stopped, like the vehicle stopped but we're in reverse. So Jake, I know you got a brand new smoking hot 2020 Nissan Titan. I think you've experienced this. You were telling me about it. So
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Little scary actually. You know, at 8 a.m. at my house, you know, the neighborhood is full of kids. They're all going to school, they're walking, they're riding bicycles. And I was in the Titan the other day and I had the vehicle in reverse, but I wasn't moving yet. And I didn't even think about moving yet, but the vehicle alerted me that there were two kids coming on bicycles before I could actually see them. So I was trying to look over my wife's car and I actually couldn't see the kids coming, but the Titan could.
So Jake, help me to understand, your vehicle was not moving, but the vehicle was in reverse. So when it detected the object that was coming in behind you, did the steering wheel shake or did you hear a beeping sound or a buzzer? Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, well, the first thing it did is it made a beep and it actually turned on the blind spot monitor on the driver's side because the kids were coming from the left side. So they were coming behind the vehicle on the left side. So it alerted me, hey, on the left side, somebody's coming, and it beeped at me. The next thing it'll do is it'll actually give you a green, a yellow, or a red warning in the camera. So you see, hey, we're getting ready to hit, and it's going to protect and take over. And so that's where BCI will start to intervene.
So let's just kind of recap that, right? When the vehicle's not moving, but it is placed in reverse, if an object is detected behind or coming from the side of the vehicle, an audible warning is emitted. And then a visual warning will appear in the camera display. Now keep in mind that warning lamp will flash a green, yellow, or red warning depending on the distance to the object. And the frequency of the tone will increase and the warning lamp will remain red when the object is close to the vehicle. So it may go like beep, 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 and then it'll start going beep, 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 beep. Is that
Right.
correct, Jake?
Right.
So those are some of the audible signals that you'll hear. So let's talk a little bit about how the BCI operates when we're in reverse, but we're actually moving. So we're backing out of a driveway or backing out of a parking place. And Jake, why don't you share a little bit more because you are a Nissan owner.
Well, one of the things that I saw, I was at the soccer field and I'm moving from a very compact vehicle now to a full-size truck. And as an owner, I'm not quite used to the size yet. And so I was backing up to the fence to park the vehicle at the soccer practice, and the fence was actually closer than I thought it was. And next thing you know, the truck is pushing my foot off of the accelerator and engaged the brakes. So it actually stopped before, short of me hitting the fence. So that's a little bit how it works.
Okay, so remember, when the BCI is in operation and the vehicle is actually moving in reverse, it provides the same audible and visual warnings, but it also momentarily applies the brakes to begin stopping the vehicle, as opposed to if you're sitting, you're already stopped. And keep in mind, if the driver's foot is on the accelerator pedal, when the detection occurs, it starts pushing the accelerator upward before applying the brakes. Back to our favorite time, shop time. Your instructor will now walk you through an exercise on side radar and sonar systems.